Hey guys, for today's writing workshop mini lesson actually, I'm going to be talking to you about using repetition in your free verse poems. We've read quite a few poems that use this method, and when it's done right, it can really enhance the sound and the look and the meaning of your poems. So here we go. In poetry and prose, there's such thing as effective repetition, which gives writing rhythm, movement, and feeling, which provides cadence. First, though, let's backtrack and deal with ineffective repetition. When the effect of repetition is wordiness that isn't pleasing to the ear or helpful to the poem. And let's begin by looking at an example of it. Out of Touch, version 1, is a draft of a poem in which Mrs. Atwell used ineffective repetition on purpose. It's a poem about the dream she had after the death of Books, her dog. Also, a little clue about ineffective repetition. When you're reading something that contains ineffective repetition, a lot of times it makes your face scrunch up like this as you're reading it because it's so awkward. So this is something that you can use when you're revising your own poems. But let's see, you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Out of Touch. Before my baby daughter was born, I asked my sister, whose baby was born before mine, will my baby feel as good to pet as my dog? My sister said she'd feel better to pet, but the baby felt different to pet. The touch of baby hugs around my neck thrilled me to my toes, but the touch of my dog flowed through me like a river of calm would flow. Nothing ever felt so calm to me. My dog felt as calm as chocolate for my hands. Now in my dreams, I feel my dog's sleek brownness. My dog feels slick like a seal, except she feels warm too. And for one ecstatic second, upon waking up, I live again in the country of my dog's touch. All right. So I'm going to move my face over here so we can talk. Can you hear the words and phrases that are repeated too close together to no effect except ear grating inelegance or making your face scrunch up? Listen to the first stanza again with its arbitrary sprinklings of my pet, sister, baby, daughter, or listen again for the purposeless overuse of calm in the second stanza. Here we go. Before my baby daughter was born, I asked my sister, whose baby was born before mine, will my baby feel as good to pet as my dog? My sister said she'd feel better to pet. You see what I'm saying? Or in the second stanza, but the baby felt different to pet. The touch of baby hugs around my neck thrilled me to my toes, but the touch of my dog flowed through me like a river of calm would flow. Nothing ever felt so calm to me. My dog felt as calm as chocolate for my hands. See what I mean? So what do you do if you used a word twice in too close proximity and you hear the awkwardness when you read your writing? Try to substitute a new word or phrasing for one of the repetitions, or see if you can cut one of the repeated words or phrases altogether. So you try a different word or try a different phrase. Look at the real Out of Touch and read along with me. Then we'll look at the two versions side by side. Out of Touch, version 2. Before Anne was born, I asked my sister, already a mother, will the baby feel as good to pet as my dog? Better, she said. Different, in fact. Baby hugs, fat arms around my neck, thrilled me to my toes, but the dog touch flowed through me like a river of calm. Nothing ever felt so right. She was chocolate for my hands. Now in dreams I feel her sleek brownness like a seal, but warm beyond warm under my fingers, and for one ecstatic second upon waking I live again in the country of touch. On the next slide you'll find both versions of the poem. Compare the first stanzas of the two poems. How did Mrs. Atwell revise or delete the instances of ineffective repetition? And what about the middle stanza and the concluding stanza? All right, so I'm going to put myself right here in between. If we look at these two stanzas, you can see that instead of saying before my baby daughter was born, she says before Anne was born. So she takes out baby and she takes out daughter and instead replaces it with her name. I asked my sister whose baby was born before mine. Okay, so instead of saying baby again, even though she took it out here, she also takes it out of the second line by saying, I asked my sister who was already a mother. So this whose baby was born before mine means the same thing as already a mother. So she just rephrased what she said. Then you can see that she left baby in this third line. Will the baby feel as good to pet? And she took out as my dog. And she moved it to a different line so that it would have a different effect when it was read out loud because we pause at the end of the line. And then instead of adding keeping my sister said she'd feel better to pet and repeating pet twice, she instead consolidates those lines, takes out the stuff she doesn't need, and shortens it. So better, she said. So she's still saying the same things here. She's just been more efficient, and it's not quite so awkward. It doesn't make your face go scrunchy. Okay? Now, you can see that the middle stanzas have changed considerably also. But the baby felt different to pet now becomes different, in fact. And then baby hugs gets shortened. You know, you can see this line. She cut this line. So this line was all one line and now it's two. So again, that spaces out some of those words that were being repeated too close together that makes your face go all scrunchy or sounds awkward. So she spread those things out. And then also take a look at her concluding paragraphs, or not paragraphs, stanzas. Take a look at her concluding stanzas. You can see that she took some unnecessary repetitions out and she changed where she broke those lines and stanzas. Some of you guys are learning this as you revise, and it makes a huge impact in how your poem sounds and also sometimes what it means. So I'm going to go ahead and go on. I think you see the difference. And Out of Touch version 2 definitely sounded so much better and didn't make your face go all scrunchy. In order to recognize and revise ineffective repetition, first you need to hear it, to read, not skim, the words of your poem, to say them in your head or softly aloud. Effective repetition can be one of a poet's best tools. Effective repetition happens when a poet chooses a word or phrase that's significant to the meaning of the poem and then uses it to deepen the meaning and move the poem. Rachel, a beginning poet, recognized that repetition was a device she could try when metaphor and simile still seemed beyond her. She experimented with it in a poem about a cherished childhood possession, a pair of purple shoes that were just like her friends. Read along with me and listen for how the repetition of purple shoes gives the poem rhythm and life. Purple shoes. I remember wearing for the first time ever a pair of purple shoes with a white heel and a clear bubble on the sole. They matched exactly to my friends. We walked into stores together wearing our purple shoes. We played outside together wearing our purple shoes. Whenever we were together, we wore those purple shoes. I remember the day I found out my feet no longer fit my purple shoes. I couldn't believe it. Those purple shoes had felt wonderful. I'd loved how they matched exactly to my friends. But most of all, I couldn't believe that this was the end of the memories that lived in our purple shoes. Siobhan also knew that repetition was the device for her when she began her poem, Tree Heartbeat. She remembered how, when she was little, her dad had told her that if she listened, she could hear the heartbeat of the big old tree in her yard. But then the tree, diseased, had to be cut down. Siobhan decided to describe the life of the tree and the life of her family through the 4 seasons and over time. So already there's a theme of cycles and repetition. Then she brought in the idea of a heart's repeating beat. This is the result. Tree heartbeat. The tree was there. It was always there, gently tap, tap, tapping at my window for me to come and play. A warm breeze lingered in its branches, a leftover from summer. As it dropped pointed red treasures in my hair, I leaned against the rough autumn bark, remembered when my dad said the tree was alive, listened for a heartbeat, tree heartbeat. Dressed in silver, she twirled her branches, dumping snow when least expected. I climbed up, 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 where nestled among branches I stayed the afternoon. I leaned against the snowy bark, listened for a heartbeat, tree heartbeat. Red blossoms burst from limbs, fireworks in April. I caught them in my shirt, only to throw them back up to the tree. I leaned my head against the soft, wet bark, listened for a heartbeat, tree heartbeat. The only shady place on the lawn, but with room enough for everyone, a hole on the left for water balloons when brothers were around. I leaned my face against the cool bark, listened for a heartbeat, tree heartbeat. Now, a lighted match against the pale blue sky, it waits for my father, knowing its life is at an end. A life of snow, balloons, blossoms, and leaves. I lean once more against the bark. I remember how my dad told me it was alive. Listen for a heartbeat, tree heartbeat. Can you imagine Siobhan's tree heartbeat without repetition? It makes the poem. Finally, notice Marcia's use of repetition in a poem she dedicated to poet Mary Oliver. Here, the repetition builds to drive home Marcia's argument. Readers of poems should recognize how hard it is to write one. Read along with me and listen to the rhythm. Did you ever, for Mary Oliver, did you ever stop and think how hard it must have been for her to write that poem? To think of a subject, one to intrigue readers, one you could write about yourself, one you could make sense of, one that could reach out and touch a life. Imagine the long hours she sat writing before dawn at her desk, crossing out as the sun came up and revealed the dew, crossing out, trying it again and again, diving for the right word until she can't swim another stroke, until she can't write another word, until she has to stop or this poem will kill her. And then finally, her poem makes it to you. You read it and nod in satisfaction. You like the poem, some good lines, and you put her book back on the shelf. But did you ever wonder what it must have taken for her to write that poem? Let's conclude this lesson by looking at the notes. Please turn to page 20 in your ELA reference folder. Use repetition. Be aware of ineffective repetition. A word repeated in too close proximity to no purpose or effect that sounds awkward, or like I said, makes your face go scrunchy. Use effective repetition to stress an important word, phrase, idea, or theme, to move a poem, to build a poem's momentum, to create cadence. When you revise, read your poem with your ears and listen for its rhythms. All right, guys. Actually, that's all I have for you for this mini lesson. You don't need to update your table of contents like the last slide said. You guys are good to go. Remember, when you're revising your poems, to use those mini lessons in your ELA reference folder, kind of like a checklist. I love and miss you. I cannot wait to see you again. Bye.